And I think of, Dorrinda made a comment before about the stigma that's still attached, and Tracy and I were chatting about that a little bit earlier on, and it's such a powerful word, but I don't think until you break it down and look at the actual definition, it becomes even more powerful. And if you think of it, the actual definition is a mark of disgrace pertaining to a situation or a person. If you think about those words and just let it hang on it for a couple of seconds, it's a pretty brutal way to define people within a setting. And I probably want to pose, I'm going to flip back to you, Trace, just for the moment. It's somewhere where a lot of work's been done over a long period of time, but how in your career have you seen that evolve, and probably from where we are now, where we've got to go?
Thanks, Clint. And I think absolutely there still is stigma, but we have moved a long way. And I think it was just really interesting just to pick up on a comment there around asking, not are you okay for one day, but asking every day. So I think we've moved beyond the need for awareness campaigns. I think awareness is always fantastic and we need to keep doing that, but there is an absolute element of people are ready to know what else can I do that's really meaningful. A common thread that I'm really hearing is around this idea of relationships and in person, being able to be with people. And it brings me back to my original point, which is as people, we haven't evolved to do this alone. We've always had people around us. We've lived in little communities, and that community has shared the responsibility of caregiving. And I think our world now is so extensive and we have access to so much information that has broken down a little bit. And I think that has played a part in this idea of stigma, because all of a sudden it's like, I am anxious, I have anxiety, as opposed to, the anxiety's there, and if I share that load with someone, it suddenly feels a lot lighter. And so I think that part of our next journey is really moving to understanding relationships as a point of healing for people. And it's actually about equipping all the people in community to be able to work together to say, we care enough to want you to be well. We want everyone to do well. So I think that's where mental health campaigns may go. It's certainly where the research is. The research is suggesting that of any intervention, it's the relationship, it's people working together.
I think that is all well and great, and Headspace is amazing and all the rest of it. From a school perspective, the problem is not everyone has money to access private services. Not everyone has the ability to get into town to an appointment. Some kids do not do well on the phone. So I don't know what the answer is, but you need more services that are accessible, that don't cost $180 every time they walk in the door. We've had kids absolutely beside themselves thinking that no one cares about them because I'm not going to therapy anymore because they can't afford it. And you're trying to work through that as well as everything else to tell them that they are worth it. So I don't know what the answer is, but definitely we do need to do more work around having stuff that everybody can access that isn't just an app, or you don't have someone saying, well, we can't afford that. It's really difficult. It's terrible.
I'll just touch on before I forget as I'm getting older. Thanks, Dimity. With stigma, I think that's a really common barrier. And I think of my father, and I know growing up, I have no doubt whatsoever, he had significant challenges and which impacted his relationships and that sort of thing too. But I certainly know that never ever would have come up as a conversation in his workplace, nor would have come up a conversation at home or with family or anywhere else. My personal experience in terms of mental health battle is the hardest experience of my life by far. I'd rather break every bone in my body than go through that feeling. So in transferring that to a younger person, when we talk about courage, and I talk about a sport perspective, we talk about someone going back in the flight of the ball, or we talk about tackling, and we talk about other aspects of a sport. But I think the courage for someone to recognise that they're not well as a young person and to seek help or get support is the most courageous thing that I can think of. The concern for me is that some young people can be so sick and so unwell that they take, that certain, really drastic action is shattering. So I think the more we can really put the foot down on stigma and have to stand up ourselves as we talk about bystanders, it's hard, but calling it out if and when you hear that, cliches of dinosaurs, they just don't have to be spoken about. we've all heard them, pull your socks up, get on with it, you're nothing to whinge about. That's all rubbish, because the reality is we're becoming probably more attuned as to how we feel, and we should respect that, and certainly for our younger generation. So I think reconfiguring what courage looks like, maybe for a young person getting into the school gate each day, is a hugely courageous effort. So I think recognising that, and not always the 100-metre sprint winner at school, is something we can start working towards.
I agree 100%. The stigma is one of the things we need to get rid of, and you spoke about your father. When I dealt with my ongoing mental health journey, I did not tell, the only person who knew was my husband. I did not tell my adult children. I did not tell anyone for months, because I felt there was a stigma behind it, that I would be a less of a person, not as good. And if I'm feeling that, how then can I, see and help the younger people? They need to know that we're going to come forward and admit that we do it. If they see older people are going through, can go through this, and be there for them and say, look, I've gone through this. That's my biggest thing, is that's what I feel, that the stigma has to stop with us. The older generation needs to stop it now. Needs to be proud and go, I survived, I can do it. Because it's known that us older women probably get it more often than not, due to the good old age of menopause, and it affects us a lot more as we get older. But we need to get rid of that stigma, 100%, because I see my children now as a parent. I see them now with my honesty. They've become more open to me, more honest and more understanding, to the point my daughter rang me and said, Mum, you've got this today. If you need me, I'm on the phone. So open up, be honest, get rid of the stigma, and that way you can have your kids and that support.
Beautiful, great points. Dimity, is there something that young people can do to combat stigma? Do you think it's still there, very present in young people?
I don't know if I would say stigma. I guess it probably depends what your environment's been like. If you've grown up with parents who might not believe in mental health, I know I have a lot of friends who say my parents think that, mental health and depression is BS, that's still a thing. I wouldn't say it's a stigma. I would say that it's more that we don't understand that we can be proactive about our mental health and managing anxiety. And, there's probably a bit of a mix-up when we say it's a normal feeling, because when we say it's normal, we think that when we're feeling it, that we shouldn't do anything about it. So, but if you do feel anxious, you have to be proactive about it as soon as you can. I know it's hard, services that, you can't get access, and that there's no appointments available, and the wait list is phenomenal. But, sometimes I just go, if I eat well and sleep well and exercise, go back to basics, that might help a little bit. But, after that, if you're still not progressing, then try your hardest to get into a GP, even if that's via phone or something like that. But yeah, the stigma probably does still exist, but it's just a lot of people probably don't realise that it still is anxiety, and that you can get help for it, I would say. Yeah.
Beautiful. I think that's a really great point. I really am interested in that perspective that, normalising it sometimes actually becomes a barrier to then seeking out help. And you're absolutely right. It's those key things that we can get back to doing that can really change the trajectory of that, anxiety and the progression of that. And so I think that that's one thing that Headspace do really well, is the early intervention, to say we don't have to wait until we're in crisis to get support. You can come to Headspace and have one session with somebody to check in about some of those basics that Dimity has mentioned. How are you sleeping? And, where are you finding sources of joy? What are the strengths that you can actually build on? We all each day that we live, we're surviving and we're using coping strategies that we might even not know are actually coping strategies. So I think that talking to someone, you know, as a one-off can be a really great way to say, hey, there are things that I can be really proactive in doing, and that there's some things that I can really tweak before it gets to that crisis point. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. That was really helpful.